The vending machine coffee tasted like burnt regret, but at 3 in the morning, it was the only thing keeping me conscious in the air traffic control tower. My name is Colton Hayes, and I've been guiding planes through the darkness for 15 years. Tonight felt different, though. Tonight, the pit in my stomach had nothing to do with caffeine withdrawal. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My phone buzzed against the metal desk. A group text from my wife Mira, my brother Tanner, and my parents. Mira had sent a selfie from what looked like a restaurant. Nothing unusual except for the man's bare forearm wrapped around her shoulder. The arm wore a watch I recognized, the cheap Timex I'd bought Tanner for Christmas. Oops, wrong chat, Mira's follow-up message read, but the damage was done. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. 15 years of marriage, and this is how I find out? Through a misdirected group text at 3 in the morning while I'm keeping commercial aircraft from colliding? The irony wasn't lost on me. I spend my nights preventing disasters in the sky while my marriage crashes and burns on the ground. My shift ended at 6. I drove home through the gray February morning, past the faded storefronts of our dying Midwestern town. The house we'd bought together 10 years ago looked smaller somehow, like it was shrinking away from me. Mira's car wasn't in the driveway. Inside, the air felt colder than the February wind. Her coffee cup sat in the sink, lipstick stain on the rim like evidence of a crime. I found myself checking for other signs. Shoes by the door that weren't mine, unfamiliar scents, anything that would confirm what I already knew. In our bedroom, I opened her laptop. We'd always shared passwords, a gesture of trust that now felt like handing someone the rope to hang you with. Her messages were right there, no attempt to hide them. Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Colton's working late again. Coast is clear. You make me feel alive again. The messages went back 3 months. 3 months of my wife and my brother planning their betrayal while I sat in that tower, protecting strangers in the sky. But it was the next message that really twisted the knife. He's so boring, Tanner. All he does is work and complain. You're everything he's not. Fun, spontaneous, alive. If misery had a brand manager, it would be my wife. I scrolled through more messages, each one a small end. Photos I didn't want to see, plans made in hotels I'd never been to, jokes about me that cut deeper than any insult from a stranger ever could. My phone rang, Mira's name on the screen. Hey, honey, she said, voice bright and fake. Just grabbing breakfast with Lindsay. Be home soon. Lindsay. Her best friend since college, the one who'd never liked me, who'd always made snide comments about my boring job and serious personality. Sure, I said. Take your time. You sound weird. Everything okay? Everything's perfect, Mira. Absolutely perfect. After she hung up, I sat in our kitchen and laughed until it turned into something else entirely. I didn't sleep. Instead, I spent the morning going through our shared cloud storage, finding every piece of evidence of their affair. Hotel receipts charged to our joint credit card. Photos of them together at restaurants I'd never been to. Screenshots of their conversations that Mira had apparently saved like love letters. The most recent receipt was from the Sunset Motel on Route 9. Yesterday. While I was at work, keeping planes from falling out of the sky, my wife and brother were playing house in a $60 a night room. I used Find My Phone to track Mira's location, still at the motel. The drive took 20 minutes through back roads lined with withered corn stalks and rusted farm equipment. The Sunset Motel looked exactly like what it was, a place where marriages go to fade. Mira's Honda sat next to Tanner's company van in the parking lot, both vehicles slightly fogged from the inside. I sat in my truck for 10 minutes, watching their silhouettes move behind the thin curtains of room 12. My brother, 7 years younger, the family favorite who could never hold a job but somehow always landed on his feet. The golden boy who'd borrowed money from me 6 times in the past 2 years and never paid back a dime. Now he was borrowing my wife. I got out of the truck and walked to Tanner's van. The logistics company he worked for had probably never imagined their vehicle would be used for adultery. I took out my keys and dragged them along the passenger side, leaving a deep scratch from bumper to bumper. Then I wrote a note on a napkin from my glove compartment. Hope it was worth it. Your brother. I tucked it under the windshield wiper and drove home. The call came an hour later. What the hell is wrong with you? Mira's voice was shrill with rage. You keyed Tanner's van? Are you insane? I don't know what you're talking about, I said calmly. I've been home all morning. Don't lie to me, Colton. Mrs. Patterson saw you at the motel. She took a picture. Our 70-year-old neighbor, the town gossip. Of course she'd been driving by at exactly the wrong moment. Interesting, I said. What were you doing at a motel, Mira? Silence. Then, we need to talk. I'm sure we do. She came home an hour later, Tanner trailing behind her like a guilty puppy. My brother looked exactly the same as he had at Christmas dinner. Sandy hair, boyish face, the kind of smile that had been getting him out of trouble since kindergarten. Today, that smile was nowhere to be found. Colton, he started, but I held up my hand. Let me guess, I said. It just happened. You didn't mean for it to go this far. You're sorry. Mira stepped forward, her chin raised in defiance. She was still beautiful at 36, still the woman I'd fallen in love with in college, but something had hardened in her face over the years, a coldness that I'd attributed to stress or age, but now recognized as contempt. We're not sorry, she said. We're in love. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. How romantic. When's the wedding? Don't be sarcastic, Colton. It doesn't suit you. What does suit me, Mira? Apparently not being your husband. Tanner finally found his voice. Look, man, we didn't want you to find out like this. How did you want me to find out? I interrupted. At the family reunion? Maybe you could have made an announcement at Mom's birthday party. You're being dramatic, Mira said. We're adults. These things happen. These things happen, I repeated. Is that what we're calling adultery now? You want to talk about adultery? Mira's eyes flashed. When's the last time you touched me, Colton? When's the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about bills, or your job, or how tired you are? So this is my fault. Everything's always someone else's fault with you. You never take responsibility for anything. I looked at my brother, who was studying his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. What's your excuse, Tanner? Did I not pay enough attention to you too? He glanced up, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been shame. It wasn't supposed to happen, Colton, but Mira was lonely, and you were available, I finished. How convenient. Mira stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. If you can't handle this like an adult, maybe we should just get divorced. I stared at her for a long moment, memorizing her face. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built a life with, the woman who was now threatening me in my own living room while her lover, my brother, stood behind her like backup. You know what, Mira? I said finally. You're absolutely right. We should get divorced. The color drained from her face. Whatever reaction she'd been expecting, it wasn't agreement. I didn't mean... No, you're right. We should definitely get divorced. In fact, I think that's the best idea you've had in years. I walked to the kitchen and opened a beer, leaving them standing in the living room. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Patterson's curtains twitching. By evening, the whole neighborhood would know about the Hayes family drama. Colton? Mira called. We need to talk about this rationally. I think we're past rational, don't you? I called back. Besides, you two have things to do. Hotels to book, lies to coordinate. Don't let me keep you. They left 10 minutes later, Tanner's scratched van looking like a wounded animal limping down the street. I finished my beer and opened another one. If they wanted a war, I'd give them a war. The lawyer's letter arrived 3 days later. Mira wanted the house, alimony, and half of everything I'd worked for. She was claiming emotional cruelty and irreconcilable differences. The letter made it sound like I was some kind of monster who'd driven my poor, innocent wife into the arms of my brother. I sat in my kitchen, reading the legal language that would dismantle my life, and something cold settled in my chest. Not anger. Anger was hot and messy and led to mistakes. This was something else entirely. This was calculation. I called in sick to work and drove to Ray's boxing gym on the outskirts of town. Ray Martinez had been training fighters for 30 years, most of them kids from broken homes looking for somewhere to channel their rage. I wasn't a kid, and my home was breaking in real time, but maybe Ray could teach me something about fighting back. You look like hell, Colton, Ray said when I walked in. He was in his 60s, built like a fire hydrant, with hands that had seen more violence than most people could imagine. Feel like it too? Wife problems. Brother problems. Wife problems. Same thing, apparently. Ray nodded like this made perfect sense. You want to hit something? I want to hit everything. That's not smart. Smart is thinking before you hit. Smart is making sure when you do hit, it counts. He handed me gloves and pointed me toward a heavy bag. For an hour, I pounded leather and canvas while Ray watched and occasionally offered advice. Don't hit angry, he said. Hit cold. Angry makes you sloppy. Cold makes you dangerous. When I was done, my knuckles were raw and my shirt was soaked with sweat, but my head was clearer than it had been in days. You feel better? Ray asked. I feel different. Different how? I thought about it. Like I'm done being the victim in my own life. Ray smiled. Now you're talking. I drove home and began my research. Mira thought she was clever, but she'd left digital breadcrumbs everywhere. Text messages, emails, credit card receipts, GPS data from her phone. I compiled it all into a folder on my laptop, organizing it by date and type of evidence. 3 months of adultery, documented in excruciating detail. But I wasn't done. I started digging deeper, looking into Mira's freelance interior design business. She'd been cutting corners on taxes, calling personal expenses business deductions, and generally operating in the gray areas that the IRS would find very interesting. Tanner was even easier. His company van wasn't supposed to be used for personal business, but he'd been driving it to the motel, to bars, to weekend trips with Mira. His GPS logs would tell a very interesting story to his boss. I made copies of everything and stored them in multiple locations. Then I started making phone calls. The first call was to Mira's business partner, Jennifer Walsh. I'd met Jennifer at company parties over the years. She was professional, ethical, and had no idea that her partner was cooking the books. Hi, Jennifer. It's Colton Hayes, Mira's husband. Oh, hi, Colton. How are you? I've been better. Listen, I'm calling because Mira and I are getting divorced, and I thought you should know about some irregularities in her business practices. I emailed her the tax documents while we talked. I could hear her sharp intake of breath as she reviewed them. Jesus, Colton, I had no idea. I figured you didn't. I just thought you should know what you're potentially liable for. The second call was to Tanner's boss, Mike Crawford. I'd met Mike at a few family barbecues. He seemed like a decent guy running a legitimate business. Mike, it's Colton Hayes, Tanner's brother. Hey, Colton, what's up? I need to tell you something about how Tanner's been using the company vehicle. I sent him the GPS data and the motel receipts. The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Are you telling me he's been using our van to cheat on his girlfriend? Not his girlfriend, Mike, my wife. Another long silence. Jesus Christ, Colton, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just handle it however you think is appropriate. The third call was to my parents. Mom answered on the second ring. Hi, honey. How are you? Not great, Mom. I need to tell you something about Mira and Tanner. I sent them everything. Every text message, every photo, every receipt. I didn't editorialize or explain. I just let the evidence speak for itself. Mom called back an hour later, crying. I can't believe they would do this to you, she said. I can't believe Tanner would do this to his own brother. Believe it, Mom. It's all there in black and white. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they really are. By evening, my phone was buzzing with calls and messages. Jennifer had confronted Mira about the tax issues and dissolved their partnership. Mike had suspended Tanner pending an investigation. My parents had called Tanner and Mira, demanding explanations that neither could provide. But I wasn't done, not even close. I created a Facebook account called Truth Hurts and began posting. Not angry rants or emotional outbursts, just facts, screenshots of text messages with timestamps, hotel receipts with dates and locations, GPS data showing where they'd been when they'd claimed to be somewhere else. I tagged everyone we knew mutually, family, friends, neighbors, coworkers. I let the evidence speak for itself, adding only minimal commentary. 3 months of lies. Paid for with our joint credit card. While I was at work. The response was immediate and brutal. Comments poured in from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Friends of ours taking sides, family members expressing shock and disgust, neighbors sharing their own suspicions and gossip. Mira's phone started ringing at 8 p.m. and didn't stop. By 10, she was at my door, mascara streaked down her face, shaking with rage. Take it down, she demanded. Take all of it down, right now. I looked at her through the screen door, this woman I'd loved for 15 years, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Why would I do that? Because it's cruel and vindictive and true, I interrupted. Everything I posted is true, Mira. Your words, your receipts, your choices. You're destroying my reputation. I didn't destroy anything. I just showed people who you really are. She pressed her face against the screen, her voice dropping to a whisper. Please, Colton. I'll do anything. We can work this out. Now you want to work it out? After 3 months of screwing my brother? After threatening to divorce me? After claiming I emotionally abused you? I was angry. I didn't mean... You meant every word. And now you get to live with the consequences. I closed the door and went to bed. Outside, I could hear her crying on my front porch, but the sound didn't move me anymore. I'd moved past sympathy into something harder and more useful. Tomorrow, I'd show her what real consequences looked like. Tanner showed up at my work the next day, looking like he hadn't slept in a week. The air traffic control facility has security, but he was still family, and the guards knew him from company picnics and Christmas parties. "We need to talk," he said when I came out for my break. "Do we? Come on, Colton, this has gone far enough." I studied my little brother's face. The boyish features that had always made him look younger than his 32 years were drawn and haggard now. His company had fired him that morning, and word was already spreading through our small town's gossip network. "Far enough?" I repeated. "We're just getting started, Tanner." "What do you want from us? You want us to grovel? Fine, I'm sorry. We're both sorry. It was a mistake." "A 3-month mistake." "Yes, a 3-month mistake. But it's over now. Mira ended it." I laughed, the sound harsh in the cold February air. She ended it? Or did she just realize that being with an unemployed guy living in a studio apartment isn't as romantic as she thought? Tanner's face flushed red. "It wasn't about money." "Everything's about money, little brother. Mira's about to find that out." That morning, I'd moved all our joint savings into an account with only my name on it. Perfectly legal. It was my money, earned through 15 years of night shifts and overtime. Mira would discover it when she tried to access the funds to pay her lawyer. I'd also canceled her credit cards, changed the passwords on all our shared accounts, and had the locks changed on the house. She could keep the clothes she'd taken when she moved in with Lindsay, but everything else stayed with me. "You can't just cut her off," Tanner said. "She has rights. She has the right to whatever a judge gives her in the divorce. Until then, she can figure out how to support herself. Maybe Lindsay will help her out." Lindsay Walsh, Mira's best friend since college, the one who'd never liked me, who'd always whispered poison in Mira's ear about how she could do better. Lindsay, who'd apparently known about the affair from the beginning and encouraged it. "This isn't you, Colton," Tanner said. "You're not this cruel." "You're right," I said. The old me wasn't cruel. The old me was a doormat who worked 60-hour weeks to support a wife who was screwing his brother. But that guy's gone, Tanner. You and Mira eliminated him. I started to walk away, but Tanner grabbed my arm. "Don't touch me," I said quietly. "We're still brothers." "No, we're not. Brothers don't do what you did." That evening, I drove to the Holding Pattern, the local bar where half the town went to drink away their problems. Tanner was there, as I'd expected, drowning his sorrows in cheap whiskey and telling anyone who'd listen that I was crazy, that I'd lost my mind, that I was destroying innocent people. The bar went quiet when I walked in. Everyone knew the story by now. Social media had made sure of that. I ordered a beer and sat at the opposite end of the bar from Tanner, close enough to hear his sob story, but far enough away to avoid immediate confrontation. "He's my brother," Tanner was saying to anyone who'd listen. "I never meant for this to happen. It just did." "Things don't just happen," said Pete Morrison, a guy I'd gone to high school with. "People make choices." "You don't understand," Tanner said. "Mira was unhappy. She needed someone to talk to." "She needed someone to screw, you mean?" said another voice. Tanner spun around on his bar stool, looking for the source of the comment, and saw me. His face went white, then red. "You," he said, standing up unsteadily. "This is all your fault." "My fault?" "If you'd been a better husband, none of this would have happened." The bar went completely silent. Even the jukebox seemed to sense the tension and stopped playing. I set down my beer and walked over to my brother. He was drunk, swaying slightly, his eyes unfocused with alcohol and self-pity. "You're right, Tanner," I said calmly. "I should have been a better husband. I should have paid more attention to the warning signs. I should have noticed when my wife started coming home late, when she started password protecting her phone, when she started picking fights with me for no reason." I stepped closer, my voice dropping so only he could hear me. "But most of all, I should have remembered that my little brother has always been a selfish, entitled piece of shit who takes whatever he wants without thinking about the consequences." Tanner swung at me, a clumsy, drunken haymaker that I easily avoided. He stumbled forward, off balance, and I caught his wrist, twisting his arm behind his back in a move Ray had taught me at the gym. "Don't," I whispered in his ear. "Don't give me an excuse." I released him and stepped back. Tanner rubbed his wrist, tears of humiliation in his eyes. "I hate you," he said. "Good," I replied. "Now we're even." I walked out of the bar, leaving Tanner to explain to a room full of people why he'd just tried to fight his brother. My phone was already buzzing with messages. People had been recording the confrontation, and it would be online within the hour. Let them post it. Let the whole world see what kind of man my brother really was. The revelation came from an unexpected source. I was going through Mira's old emails, looking for more evidence of financial irregularities, when I found a thread from 6 months ago. Messages between Mira and Lindsay that painted a very different picture of how the affair had started. You need to teach him a lesson, Lindsay had written. He thinks he's so much better than everyone else. I don't know, Mira had replied. Colton's not that bad. Not that bad. He's condescending and controlling. Remember when he wouldn't let you quit your job to start the design business full-time? He was being practical. We needed the steady income. He was being controlling. And what about when he wouldn't co-sign that loan for your sister? She had terrible credit, Lindsay. It would have been financial suicide. See? He always has an excuse. He always knows better than everyone else. The conversation continued for dozens of messages, with Lindsay systematically poisoning Mira against me, bringing up every disagreement we'd ever had and reframing it as evidence of my controlling nature. But it was the next part that made me freeze. You know who really appreciates you? Lindsay had written. Tanner. I see how he looks at you at family gatherings. Tanner's sweet, but he's Colton's brother. So? He's not married. You barely are, emotionally speaking. I couldn't do that to Colton. Why not? What has Colton ever done for you besides hold you back? The messages continued over weeks, with Lindsay gradually convincing Mira that she deserved better, that Tanner was interested, that I would never change, that she owed it to herself to find happiness. And then, the smoking gun. I talked to Tanner at the grocery store yesterday, Lindsay had written. I might have mentioned that you've been feeling lonely lately. Lindsay, you didn't. I just planted a seed. What happens next is up to you. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. Lindsay hadn't just known about the affair. She'd orchestrated it. She'd manipulated both Mira and Tanner, using Mira's insecurities and Tanner's weakness to destroy my marriage. But why? I kept reading and found my answer in an email from 2 years ago. Mira had recommended Lindsay for a freelance position at my company. I'd reviewed her portfolio and turned her down. Her work wasn't good enough, and I'd told the hiring manager as much. Lindsay had found out and blamed me for the rejection. In her mind, I'd cost her a job out of spite or jealousy or some other petty motive. She'd been nursing a grudge for 2 years, waiting for the right moment to strike back. And when that moment came, she'd used my wife and brother as weapons. I printed out every email, every message, every piece of evidence. Then I called Mira. We need to talk, I said. Colton, I can't keep doing this. The lawyers said, forget the lawyers. Meet me at the house in an hour. Bring Tanner. Why would I? Because if you don't, I'm going to post something online that will destroy more than just your reputation. She was silent for a long moment. What are you talking about? 1 hour, Mira. Both of you. They showed up together, looking like condemned prisoners walking to their execution. Mira had lost weight in the past week, and there were dark circles under her eyes. Tanner looked even worse, unshaven, wearing the same clothes I'd seen him in yesterday. I let them into the living room and handed each of them a folder. What's this? Mira asked. Read it. I watched their faces as they went through the emails. Mira's expression changed from confusion to shock to something that might have been horror. Tanner just looked confused. I don't understand, he said. What does this mean? It means you're an idiot, I said. Both of you. Mira was still reading, her face getting paler with each page. She planned this, she whispered. Lindsay planned all of this. From the beginning, I confirmed. She's been manipulating you for months, convincing you that I was the enemy, that you deserved better, that Tanner was your salvation. But why? Because I cost her a job 2 years ago. Because she thought I needed to be taught a lesson. Mira looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry, Colton. I had no idea. Sorry doesn't fix this, Mira. But if I was manipulated... You still made the choice, I interrupted. Every hotel room, every lie, every time you looked me in the eye and pretended everything was fine, those were your choices. Tanner finally understood what he was reading. That snake set us up. Language, little brother. That snake is Mira's best friend. Was, Mira said quietly. She was my best friend. What are you going to do with this? Tanner asked, holding up the folder. I smiled, and both of them flinched at the expression. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth, all of it. The Riverside Community Center was hosting its annual winter fundraiser, a potluck dinner and auction that drew half the town. Everyone would be there, family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, all the people who'd been following our drama on social media for the past week. I'd volunteered to help with the audio-visual setup, which gave me access to the projection system and microphone. The organizers were grateful for the help. They had no idea what I was really planning. Mira and Tanner were both there, sitting at separate tables, trying to avoid eye contact with me and everyone else. Lindsay was there too, playing the role of the supportive friend, comforting Mira and shooting dirty looks in my direction. My parents sat with my aunt and uncle, looking uncomfortable and sad. They'd tried to stay neutral, but the evidence I'd shared made that impossible. Mom had stopped speaking to Tanner entirely, and Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. I waited until after dinner, when everyone was settling in for the auction. Then I walked to the front of the room and took the microphone. "Excuse me, everyone. Before we start the auction, I'd like to share something with you all." The room went quiet. I could see Mira's face go white, could see Tanner starting to stand up. "Most of you know that my wife and I are getting divorced," I began. "What you might not know is the whole story." I clicked the remote, and the first slide appeared on the projection screen. A text message from Mira to Tanner. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again." Gasps echoed through the room. Someone's child asked their parent what the words meant. "This is what my wife was sending to my brother while I was at work," I said calmly. But that's not the interesting part. Click. Another slide. The email thread between Mira and Lindsay. The interesting part is how it all started, how someone I trusted, someone who pretended to be my friend, decided that I needed to be punished. I read selected passages from the emails, watching Lindsay's face turn from pale to green. She started to stand up, but the people around her were staring, and she sat back down. Lindsay Walsh orchestrated my wife's affair with my brother because I didn't recommend her for a job 2 years ago. She spent months poisoning my wife against me, convincing her that she deserved better, that my brother was interested. Click. More emails, more evidence. She used my wife's insecurities and my brother's weakness to destroy my marriage, all because she felt I'd wronged her professionally. The room was silent, except for the sound of my voice and the hum of the projector. But here's what's really interesting, I continued. Lindsay didn't just manipulate my wife, she manipulated all of you. Click. Social media screenshots. While she was orchestrating the affair, she was also spreading rumors about me, telling people I was controlling, abusive, that Mira was afraid of me. She wanted to make sure that when the affair came out, I'd be the villain and Mira would be the victim. I could see people in the audience turning to look at Lindsay, who was now openly crying. She played everyone, my wife, my brother, my friends, my family, all because she couldn't accept that her work wasn't good enough for a job she wanted. Tanner stood up. "That's enough, Colton." "Is it? Because I don't think it is." Click. Financial records. Let's talk about how my wife used our joint credit card to pay for hotel rooms where she was screwing my brother. Let's talk about how she's been committing tax fraud in her business. Let's talk about how my brother used his company vehicle for personal business, including driving to those hotel rooms. "Stop," Mira whispered, but the microphone picked it up. "Let's talk about how they planned to take half of everything I've worked for, claiming I was emotionally abusive, while they were the ones lying and cheating and stealing." I clicked to the final slide. A simple message. "The truth will set you free." "I'm not the victim here," I said, looking directly at Mira. "I'm not the villain either. I'm just a man who got tired of being lied to." I set down the microphone and walked out of the community center, leaving behind a room full of shocked silence and 3 people whose lives would never be the same. Outside, the February air felt clean and cold. My phone was already buzzing with calls and messages, but I ignored them. I had one more stop to make. Lindsay's car was still in the parking lot. I took out my keys and carved a simple message into the paint. Manipulator. Then I got in my truck and drove home to the house that was mine alone now, where I could finally sleep without wondering what lies were being told in my own bed.